Hello, and thank you for joining the ustwo behind the scenes event. Welcome everybody. Just to introduce myself, my name's Aisha and I'm head of people, and I'm joined here today with Neith, Aaron and Rachel. Sadly Lucy couldn't join, but we're really happy that you're here today. So shall we start with some introductions? Do you want to start with yourself, Rachel?
So I'm Rachel. I'm a design lead at ustwo. I've been at ustwo for almost 4 years now, and I've spent the past 2 years working on the Body Coach project with some of these lovely people.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Aaron. I am a tech principal at ustwo. I've been here for about 6 years now. I line manage most of our London and Lisbon technologists, support various projects, get involved in new business development, studio strategy, and wear about 20 other hats at any moment in time. But yeah, one of the projects I was very involved with over the last couple of years has been the Body Coach as well. Over to you, Neith.
Hi, I'm Neith. I'm a full-stack engineer at ustwo. I've been here for also about 4 years now, and most recently I've been on the Body Coach project as well for about 4 months, I'd say.
Cool. So thanks for that. So a lot of people who probably joined us, so we've got like a lot of vacancies at the moment, really great opportunities, and they'd like to know a bit about what's it like working at ustwo. So what's your average day in your job? Rachel, I just wanted to start with you on that one.
So for a designer at ustwo, I think it varies from the stage of a project that you're in. So for example, on the Body Coach now, we've got a huge development team and we're shipping features and releases quite regularly. So as a designer, you may spend about half of your day designing a new feature, but you also might spend a few hours partnering with Neith on a call to design review a feature that's in development or to troubleshoot something that's not quite working as you expected it to in the design stage. So there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of jumping on calls with different people, particularly whilst we're remote, whereas normally we'd just be going and tapping each other on the shoulder in the studio. So yeah.
And Neith, what about yourself? I expect as a designer and in the engineering team, it's quite different, maybe.
I think there's definitely some common threads, like obviously super collaborative. As Rachel said, I'd be jumping on calls with many of the designers to work on new features together. Also, I'd be pair programming with many other engineers across disciplines. So perhaps I would be pairing with an iOS engineer while I'm doing some of the back-end work to enable them to do something on the front end so we can work on that together. But I guess typically most of my morning, like the first chunk of the morning is on calls, so pull request review with the full stack team where we get updates on what each other's been working on, and we can helps it make it easier for us to review each other's code. And then also our stand-ups for the team. And then, after late morning, I guess it's a bit more open-ended. So it would be depending on what tickets you're working on and what projects you are on. It would be a lot more collaborative, and then try and find some hour slots to do a bit of focused work.
Do you get many curveballs at all during the day?
Yeah, occasionally. I mean, like impromptu meetings, like stuff happening on the project, with a project with such a large surface area as the Body Coach, there's obviously stuff that can go wrong at any moment. So you have to be ready to adapt. For example, if we see some areas in the back end that are quite interesting, you should be ready to do some investigation if that's your responsibility at the time. I think we handle that and share those responsibilities quite well on the team. So I wouldn't say they're massive curveballs, but we should be prepared to deal with them. I think usually we are.
A design agency, it can sometimes have that kind of like elusiveness where, obviously the client gives us a brief and then lots of stuff happens behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden there's like a product, ta-da! So, on an incredible project like the Body Coach, and I know you all have had, you all worked on the Body Coach, yeah. Tell us a bit more about the Body Coach, what your role was, Aaron, and so a bit behind the scenes on that project as well.
Sure. So when the Body Coach came to us and, with this really incredible product and proposition and wanted us to help them take it to kind of the modern, digital, dynamic, real-time age and moving out of just static PDFs and YouTube videos and allow them to really broaden their feature set, broaden their audience. And people like Rachel worked with them to figure out the next iteration of their proposition. I joined shortly after that, a little bit before the build phase was kicked off, to figure out, okay, but how are we going to do that? from a technical architectural standpoint, which key third-party services are we going to be using, defining which operating systems we have to support, all those nitty-gritty details, such that when we start bringing on developers, we actually know how we're going to go about development, not necessarily all the answers, but the kind of early big questions. So I joined from that point, working really closely with design and product and delivery strategy, and obviously Nikki and Joe Wicks being our client, and then take that from 0 lines of code to a new iOS app on both phone and tablet, a new .com website, a new website for employees to log in and manage the system, an entirely new backend to support this brand new ecosystem, and take that from nothing all the way through to launch and beyond. And so I helped lead the technical team, making sure we had the right direction, making sure we were adapting when we learned things along the way where our assumptions were either more right than we anticipated or a bit off, and we pivoted and just try and get the product out the door as successfully but also as quickly as possible, and then grow and iterate from there.
And what do you think ustwo brought to the table that other design companies may not have been able to offer to?
While it's not necessarily totally unique to ustwo, one of the things I think is quite distinctive to ustwo is our deep collaboration. A lot of people in other companies say, yeah, we're agile. Well, are you actually agile or are you waterfall with sprints? Are you really working together? Are you actually taking that learning mindset, and you aren't trying to plan things out to the nth degree 9 months in advance, but actually taking the time to say, no, we're not only shipping this feature in as small a way as possible to get return on investment, but we're also shipping it super early so that we can learn from it and then bring that in and kind of evolve how we're working. It's not like we're, designers sit off in a corner and they design up this incredible thing and product takes it and, reforms all the requirements and chucks it over to our developers who then code away, who then chuck it off to, a QA team halfway across the world who sends it back to our developers. We're not working in silos. That's not how we work. Instead, every single discipline is working together at every point of that journey. Our designers, as they start mocking things up, are getting on a call with our developers to say, hey, what do you think about this? And our developers aren't just saying, oh, it would be a little bit easier if we just tweaked it this way, which they are, but they're also saying, hey, we've got this great new technology, we could take advantage, we could push this even farther than you're thinking about really, really easily. Let's go ahead and try that. And it's that incredible deep collaboration that, again, isn't unique to ustwo, but is extremely distinctive about ustwo, and it's part of the reason we make the really exceptional products that we do.
Yeah, and do you think that's due to the fact that we've got a delivery team who really kind of like push on those kind of like agile principles? Do you think that's partly just our culture anyway?
All of the above. So absolutely the delivery team, ensuring that we have really exceptional ways of working and are always adapting them to fit the needs of the team, the project, and the client. That absolutely helps take us to that next level. But really that's something we look for in anybody that we hire at ustwo is, are they really good problem solvers and are they really good team players above and beyond just being able to write code or, exceptional in Figma or design research or whatever it need be. Yes, we need those skills too. But fundamentally, we're all a bunch of problem solvers. We like solving these hard problems. That's why clients come to us, is because they've got a problem they themselves can't solve, and we're there to help them. And so that problem solving mentality and that teamwork, that collaboration, bringing that together and not defining yourself solely by your little siloed role, and just all rolling up your sleeves and mucking into the problem and working together. That's what makes those products, and that's why we do it so well.
And do you think that's key for somebody who may want to come and work with us to kind of like have those?
I think it's really important. If you've got that experience, that's great. If you don't necessarily have that experience because you've never worked at a place that has given you that flexibility, that openness, that's okay. For us, it's much more about a willingness to learn and that attitude than necessarily that you've got 10 years of experience or even 1 year of experience having done that. Yes, that's a bonus, but definitely not a requirement. For us, it's more that mindset and attitude. I guess if you're the kind of person who wants to put on your headphones and code for 8 hours a day and never talk to anybody, you're probably not going to be super happy at ustwo. But if you want to code and talk to other people and do a bit of design exploration. Join the user testing as a developer. The fact that you want to work closely across all the disciplines. As a designer, you want to know what is the strategic value and what is this direction we're heading. As a business strategist, you want to sit down with our product team and work with them to really unpack a roadmap in the short, mid, and long term. All of those kinds of things. If that's interesting to you, that you want to kind of go beyond your role a little bit, that you want to work together to solve really fascinating problems, you're going to have a blast at ustwo.
Cool. I mean, Rachel, as a designer and starting at ustwo, was there anything when you came to ustwo you were kind of like pleasantly surprised about, or you thought, oh, that's different?
I think it's a lack of egos. There's such a, as Aaron was just describing, there's such a collaborative culture, but nobody's precious. So as a designer, you're not like, well, I must be the one to come up with the idea. It doesn't matter where an idea comes from. It doesn't matter where the strategy comes from. I think people welcome being challenged and discussing whether that is the right thing and seeing things from different angles. And I hadn't really been exposed to a culture like that before, where it was like, oh, I can contribute to whether I think this pricing strategy is too expensive for the Body Coach subscription, and like my opinion is welcomed and asked for, and as is everybody on the teams. It's not like, oh, I'm going to sit in this little box and this is the only thing that I'm allowed to touch. So I'd sort of heard about it, and I knew friends that worked at ustwo before I joined, but seeing it in action was completely different.
Yeah. Neef, you've recently joined the engineering team, right? Is there anything that Aaron's not kind of like, how are you finding it in the engineering team? Because now you're inside the engineering team rather than kind of looking in. Is there anything you wanted to kind of share? Has Aaron kind of like given a really truthful description?
He's certainly given a very, very truthful description. But I would say maybe zooming back to the earlier question about like how a design agency might often just disappear for months on end and come back with a product. I think we have a really good colleague who used to describe that as being a submarine,
right,
and just going out doing stuff and then coming back. I think one of the things I really love about ustwo, and especially the Body Coach project, is that the clients are actually kind of on the journey with us the whole time. Like, as we've been describing, like being super collaborative with our colleagues, I think we absolutely include the Body Coach team and other client teams as part of that. We often refer to it as like a one-team approach with the client and us, like embedded together, working on things together. So, we have demos every 2 weeks after every sprint, and we're obviously talking about the work we're doing, and the Body Coach team are on those calls. But even in between those, I can't say the amount of times that I've been on calls with the content team on the Body Coach where we're like brainstorming ways that we can work together to enable a new feature to happen and make sure that we are flagging blockers with one another and just sharing the work. So I think that's something really important. So like having that empathy to work with the clients and also learn from them is super important, because there's always going to be perspectives that they can bring that, despite the super diverse viewpoints we have at ustwo, they have a different viewpoint as well, which is just as welcome. So I really love
they're
learning from them.
experts in their field, right?
Exactly.
Like, who knows more about fitness than Joe Wicks at the moment? Yeah. Not many people. So you've got to include him. He's a fountain of knowledge, and he knows what's going to work and what's not going to work in the space.
Exactly. I mean, that's part of that collaboration, where the client can bring their domain expertise and we bring our digital product experience, and we bring, together as a collaborative team, that intersection that, again, makes those award-winning products.
Yeah. B Corp. So we're a B Corp, which means that we've made a commitment to do good things and be held accountable for it. Now, a lot of people probably, maybe they don't know exactly what it means to be a B Corp and how we have managed to become a B Corp. And I was wondering, Neef, because I know you've been involved in that quite a bit. If you could, just share what being a B Corp is and some of the things that we've done to kind of maintain and help, our status as a B Corp.
Yeah, so being a B Corp, it is I want to say certification, but it might be an accreditation.
Certification.
I think there is a difference between the two, but I don't know what it is. It's one of those things where an organisation makes a commitment, and meets very stringent criteria across quite a broad range of, I guess, business operations. I think there might be 4 of them. One of them is governance and transparency, sustainability, and I think also employee engagement and like how you treat your employees. So there's loads of questions across these areas, and you have to answer them really truthfully. You audit basically your entire supply chain, which I think is especially arduous if you're a company that makes physical products, but even if not, like obviously at ustwo we have our own supply chain of like loads of suppliers, and even the clients that we work with, we've got to answer questions about them. We've got to answer questions about how transparent we are, how we treat our employees, like how does our governance work, how is our board set up, because ustwo, as well as being the studios, we also have a games team, and we're tied together by a parent company. So there's obviously, like every company will have these kind of nuances, but you go through this quite long, arduous process to answer all these questions, and if you meet a certain threshold of points, you can become a B Corp. And the interesting thing I think about B Corp is that every 2 years you have to go through the process again, and you have to increase your score, because if you don't increase your score, you're out. Yeah, exactly. So not only is it a threshold that you need to meet, it's also a statement that you sign up for to say, I'm constantly going to improve this. I think that's one of the like really difficult but also really cool things about being a B Corp. And then, I guess in terms of how it's affected us too, I mean, it might have been 2 years ago now that we became a B Corp. And obviously, for many reasons, it's been quite an interesting 2 years. We've, got a certain threshold of points. We've changed our like articles of association, so the way that the board is responsible for the organisation and us and clients is changed. And we recently made a commitment to focus on our sustainability score, I guess. So we've been doing a lot of work about how to improve sustainability, and a lot of employees have been involved in that process. I think that's going to take a very different turn when we return to an office, because having a physical location is obviously really tied to how sustainable you can be in that regard. So I think while we've been remote, it's been one journey about sustainability, and then I'm sure we're going to have to revisit that again. But also we'll be doing, I'm sure we'll be focusing on different initiatives as part of being a B Corp in the near future, and ustwobies will kind of have their thoughts asked for.
What sort of initiatives have we been part of? There was like a tree search.
One of the things is that we're now offsetting the carbon emissions for the whole organisation. So that's obviously like a really big plus. We've also, our games team has gone above and beyond about tying some of their commercials to carbon offsetting as well, with the release of their most recent game, Alba, which itself is a really fun adventure about conservation. Not only are we kind of making commitments to do things like reduce our carbon footprint, but also offset what we can't reduce. We're also trying to tie some of our commercial model to helping drive that forwards even more. So I think that's kind of one example off the top of my head. I'm
going to plug Alba because my daughter absolutely loves that game. She's 3.5, but it's just so beautiful, like the kind of the like sustainability, the ecology around it as well, and the environmental stuff. Yeah, it's so great. About B Corp, I was going to ask one other question, because I know you know quite a bit about B Corp as well, don't you, Aaron?
I guess one interesting thing to know is that obviously we all work in client services, so we're kind of adjacent to the game studio in the wider ustwo family. But our clients are also equally interested in us becoming a B Corp. We're seeing that a lot more in requests for proposals that we get from clients and briefs from them. And one of the things they ask is, are you a B Corp? And this is something they're equally interested in, because like us, they also, the clients we work with have incredible values, incredible missions, and they also want to have this really positive impact on the world. And they're recognizing, that we share that same value and that we've made this commitment. And that's been also really, really amazing. And again, helps us find clients that do share our values, because either they themselves are B Corps, or maybe they're on that journey, or maybe they're, just barely starting along that path, but they know that if they're working with companies who are B Corps like us too, that they will get challenged in a positive way. And that's something we bring to our clients.
Yeah, it's a really great representation as well of our values, isn't it, being a B Corp? And I know just being part of like some of the, the interview process, that again, even from a candidate point of view, people really like the fact that we're a B Corp. Traditionally to be held to account for things like that was normally like in the private sector or not-for-profit sector, and for us as a kind of privately held company to be held to account, I think is really great.
Yep.
I think on a personal level as well, it's really nice to know that you're not going to turn up to work tomorrow and be asked to work on a tobacco brief or something, or a deforestation brief. Like, it's just that security of knowing that you're not going to be put in that position is it's really great.
Tell us a bit about the recruitment process, Aaron. I know you've been involved in quite a lot of the hiring recently, because I think people want to know, like, what can they expect?
Well, two things. First off, as we mentioned, we've got a lot of openings right now, but that's because business is booming. We're doing really, really well. It's not because, all of a sudden we've lost half our team, but actually, when many businesses really struggled at the start of the pandemic, a lot of our clients and many new clients came in realizing how critical digital really is for them and how they weren't doing enough. And the pandemic really underscored that for them. And so we've actually seen a real growth, which has meant we've got openings in almost all of our sub-disciplines right now in tech, and openings really across almost all the disciplines at the moment if you go to our website. So just want to make that clear as to why we've got all those openings.
Yes, we're growing.
We are growing. We're doing really well. But in terms of the process, so that's going to vary a lot from role to role. What you will see quite typically is after an initial CV screening, the first interview is a bit of a screening interview. About half the questions will be targeted to your discipline. So in a technical interview, there'll be tech questions. In a design interview, there'll be design questions, and then a few kind of other general purpose questions. After that, there's usually either a more detailed discipline interview, or you'll go straight into a cross-discipline interview. Because as I mentioned before, collaborating is so important. We make that a part of our interview process. So if you're interviewing with the tech team, you're actually going to be interviewed by design and product and delivery and business development and strategy, and vice versa. And then usually for a final interview, you will be meeting with some senior member of the team, either one of our directors, heads of, either in a one-on-one or in a small group setting. Again, just as a final interview to dive into maybe some specific points that is unique to that role. And just to provide, that kind of third and distinct perspective. Different roles will have a slightly different process, but usually it roughly follows that. One thing, that's really important at us too is our values, and one of them is being human. We really try to make this process as human as possible. So we always try and leave time at the end of every interview to turn the tables and let our candidates ask us questions. We try to turn around from one interview to the next interview really, really quickly. We don't want you waiting for weeks. We're not going to ghost you and you'll never hear back from us again. You will hear back from us. And we try to, make this process kind of as short and as open as we reasonably can be. Again, just to make the process a bit more human for everybody involved.
How important are qualifications and experience? I
virtually never look at where a person went to school. The exception to that would be if somebody's a really recent graduate, be from university or a boot camp or something, or maybe they've made a recent career change. Then I might look. Again, I don't care where they went for any of this. I'm more interested to kind of gauge how long have they been in the industry, and so I use the kind of time since graduation as a bit of an indicator of that. I'm much more interested in your experiences than necessarily where you went to school and what degree or certification you hold. I'm a technical leader, but I've got a degree in mathematics. Very abstract mathematics. Has nothing to do with my day-to-day.
I'd never have guessed.
And so to me that's not important. It's the experience and getting a sense of who you are, what you're going to bring to this role in your CV. And I would strongly encourage anybody to apply to really consider even a very short cover letter to kind of provide that bit of color that tells a bit more about the person behind the CV. Really, really helps you stand out. So long as I get a sense of, you are a developer, you are a designer, or whatever the role may be, I want to bring you into that first interview really, really quickly. Again, because it's really hard to really understand a person from just the CV. And so very, very keen to meet that person and really get to know who they are. and get a much better sense of what experiences they do have, what opportunities for growth they have, because there are no unicorns out there who magically have exactly even experience at exactly every level you could possibly want. Everybody's going to have their strengths. Everybody's going to have their opportunities for growth. And for us, it's much more, do you have a baseline that we can build off of? Do you have an interest and willingness to learn and grow? And are you going to be that problem solver, that team player that I was discussing earlier? And those are the things that we really look for, especially in those early interviews.
Yeah, because I've seen quite a few kind of technical CVs which just have quite a lot of. It's a bit kind of sometimes they can be a bit bland, a bit black and white, just some languages written down there. So you kind of in some way want to get that human
element across. Like I said, ideally a cover letter or even, a statement at the top of the CV. For our freelancers, I am looking a bit more specifically on very specific technical skills because I'm trying to fill a very specific need on a specific project. But for all of our perm roles, it's much more general. And I'm looking for much more general experience. In tech specifically, yes, I'm curious as to what programming languages and frameworks and things Equally, if not more important, I'm interested in the work you actually did. I solved this problem on this project. Or maybe this client's under NDA because I can't talk about it, but can I talk about some of the types of work I did? I built this login system. Whatever problems you solved as part of your job, that's the most interesting to me when I'm looking at a CV. And a lot of our other disciplines have their equivalents. And likewise, yes, having experience with Figma or Sketch or something is really useful as a designer. But those problems that you've solved along the way, that's really will make you stand out.
From a kind of design point of view, do you have any top tips?
So it is, in design, we always look at people's portfolios. I would say it's not like brand top trumps. I think people get really I must show this project that I did for Nike or for Adidas and look to put the glossy brands in there. But actually we're much more interested in the problem that you're solving and how you have solved that problem and your way of thinking. So we're not interested in the flashy, pristine brands. It's this is the problem that I had and this is the process that I went through to get to where we got to. Mm-hmm. It's much more around that process and you being able to walk through that process and take us on that journey with you than it is, I did this really fancy thing.
Anyone else want to share anything?
Not the junior roles, but the mid, senior, lead level roles and above, we're really interested in those experiences when things didn't go according to plan. When have things gone wrong? How did you deal with it? And how would you, do it differently given the chance to go back in time?
Yeah.
And then in design, it doesn't necessarily have to be that something went wrong, just that you might have done some testing and you might have learned this thing and that might have meant you completely pivoted your design. That's a key part of the process. So being able to talk about that is not, everybody has an idea that they think is really great and then they put it in front of people and it doesn't test as well as you thought it would. Yeah. That's normal. That's not a bad thing. Talk about that.
That's what we want to see. Yeah. This is a bit of an open kind of discussion topic. So we've really been focusing quite a lot on trying to bring in diverse talent. Also, as part of the ustwo culture, to be really inclusive as well. Yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on some of the, or share with people what we've been doing to...
Yeah, so in the design department at ustwo, we are very lucky in that our, I'm going to get the title wrong, European Executive Design Director is an amazing woman. And then, we have a couple of women at the lead and principal level. So we're very fortunate with the gender bias in our department. Not so great in other areas of diversity. So we are partnering with an initiative called Flipside, which are on a mission to get more people from underrepresented backgrounds into the design and tech industry. Mm-hmm. So we are taking 2 product design interns from that program next week, actually. That program starts, so they'll do a 3-month training course with Flipside, and then they'll have a 3-month internship with us, and we will teach some of those modules, and then hopefully we'll be able to hire someone off the back of it. So I think that's a great program. I was fortunate to be involved in it a couple of years ago as well, and it's just I think that's the way to get more people into the industry, to show people that there are these jobs and there's such a variety of roles available. I think it's so easy when you're at school not to know the jobs that exist in different industries, and like you don't know that these jobs exist unless you know someone in that space. So I think the more that we can do in that world is amazing. And I just love that one of the Flipsiders that I interviewed said she'd seen the advert for it on TikTok, and I thought, that's great.
Down with the programme.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is such a big topic, and it's like, really hard to give a well-rounded overview of it in like, a few answers to a question. But so, I mean, we have some committees at ustwo which have been set up recently. I know you and I are both on both the London one and our Global D&I committee. And I think often like committees get a bit of a backlash because it's just seen as this like thing that a company might do to just like say they're doing something. But I genuinely believe that in our case, we've actually had some really good progress just in terms of like making sure that everyone across ustwo is super aware of things, and that like issues that are more relevant to our New York studio I'm aware of, because I think that's also a really big part of how you can make people feel included and how you can approach topics with multiple viewpoints, is like from that geographic perspective around the world. So that's super important. And also just so you can hash out all these like small ideas and test things with really senior people in leadership, like our CPO, who's super involved, our Chief People Officer, who is super involved in these committees, and being able to just get ideas on paper with her and with the team, like from small things like making sure that people can use their preferred names on their email address and in Slack, through to quite large things as like, how do we, set targets at a company? Like, should we even set targets as a company? So I think that thinking is evolving quite well, and I'm really pleased to see that, from my perspective, in the European studio, we've made lots of progress in terms of like the people that I see and engage with around the studio. And that's one side of the story, means that, we can get people from different backgrounds into the studio, but then obviously there's an even bigger piece of work, is like, how do you make sure that they are included and make sure that they're super happy that they're, make sure that they have those opportunities to progress. And another small thing might be like changing how we advertise roles to make sure they're all a lot more visible internally for people who might want to progress, making sure that training and development is like more evenly distributed in a good way. There's like tons of plates spinning all over it, and I don't think they'll ever stop spinning. It's not the kind of thing that you can just be like, we have a committee and then great, let's meet once a month. But it's like, okay, we have a committee, but how can we make sure that leadership is accountable to making the changes that people recommend? How can we make sure that the word is spread so that everyone feels an opportunity, like they do with projects, to let their voice be heard? Because you don't have to be from any kind of background to make your voice heard if you have an idea to make things better for anybody in the studio. So yeah, I think it's just the kind of thing that, I'm glad to see that we're doing loads of different things, and I'm glad to be part of, the committees, and I hope that all that stuff continues, because I'm really happy with the progress that we've made so far, and I know there's a lot more to do.
Absolutely. And just on the kind of like inclusion front and voices being heard, because that's kind of a key part of feeling included, is being able to feel like you can speak up without retribution, and also, to be able to be yourself, essentially. Aaron, have you got any examples of, or anything to say on that, and what us to do to ensure that people's...
Sure. I mean, so obviously our leadership from top to bottom is always extremely explicit with everybody in every situation, reminding them you do have permission to voice your concerns. You do have your permission to challenge us. You do have your permission to find, the right ways to express yourself. Not only can you say all those things, but we're interested in what you have to say. But obviously that explicit permission only takes you so far. We have regular town halls or fireside chats where our leadership team, basically opens up the floor to our studio and says, what sorts of questions do you have? And people can ask them directly. People can share them anonymously, asynchronously over a chat message where nobody will know the question they've asked. But those firesides and town halls are extremely open. And again, the leadership team is open to be challenged, where people think, oh, maybe ustwo isn't doing enough here. The leadership team wants to hear that, and they want to, one, understand where they're doing well and where they could do better. They want to make sure people have their voices heard. They want to get those people involved in the process. It's not just, what could we do as a leadership team to take things to the next level, but how can we get the whole studio involved in being a part of that process? But we've got that forum at the studio level. We even have that forum with our group CEO, Karsten, as well. So we get it, at every level of leadership. And then obviously you've got your one-on-one conversations with your line manager. Again, that's another opportunity. And if you don't feel like you've got the confidence necessarily to challenge it a bit more head on, our line managers, again, are equally supportive of their direct reports, and you can talk to them in a private and confidential way. And maybe it's your line manager acting as your champion, because maybe you're just hyper introverted. Maybe you struggle with self-confidence. That's okay. ustwo is still a great place for you, and we will provide you with the supports you need to again still be able to feel included, and still feel like you've got that same voice that everybody else does.
Oh, I was going to talk a bit more about the social perspective. But
Yeah, I guess one last thing I would add is I want to make sure we're not painting too rosy a picture here. I think we have been doing amazing work on both the diversity front and the inclusion front. If you see Nikki, our managing director's pay gap blog posts over the last five or so years, and how we've actually got in our London studio a fairly balanced gender pay across all the levels. Whereas we weren't 5 years ago, and we've made significant progress there, and we've made significant progress in different demographics in terms of our recruitment and in terms of our inclusion. Again, as Neve said, that's a continuous journey. We've got more ways we can improve, and we would love people who are equally passionate about that to join us too. And with that explicit permission, I'm telling you right now, you can join with the understanding that there's a lot of really great things here, but we're equally interested in people who want to be a part of that process and push us even farther forward.
And I think lots of agencies have a bit of a bad name for going out partying all the time, and that socials revolve around alcohol, basically. And I think at ustwo, there is a very conscious effort made to make sure that that is not just the case. Obviously, alcohol is there if people want to drink it, but there's like a cinema trip next week. There's a trip to a gallery. There's on Christmas, we did a cook-along thing for Christmas dinner and ice skating and stuff like that. So it's not just intense, big nights out, basically, is how you socialize with the people that you work with. There's games nights. It's like table football in the studio from all these complicated games that I don't know how to play. Been introduced to loads of things like code names and all of this stuff. Whether you are somebody who's super extroverted and loves to go out and party, or whether you're somebody more introverted who would rather just go for play a game on a Friday evening with a friend, you've got those things covered. Again, always more that we can do, but it is something that the party planners us two are very conscious of, is how do you make it an environment so that everybody has some fun.
I was just going to go circle back to what you're saying, Aaron, as well, about the amount of opportunities that people have to challenge the leadership team, essentially. I was quite struck by it joining ustwo. Yeah, and the transparency. Yeah, we use, people get the opportunity to, ask questions directly. And I was really sort of comforted by the fact that all of those questions get answered, live, or if you run out of time, which we normally don't actually, because we're quite good at managing that time. They're answered afterwards. So, and there's more than one opportunity, like a month, it happens on a regular basis, like you said, at different levels. So I think that's really, really great. So let's talk about what happens when we're not working. How do you spend time together? I mean, you mentioned some of them already, haven't you, Rachel?
You did Run Club for a bit, didn't you, Neve?
Yeah, I did do Run Club for a while, actually. That's one of the things that I miss the most, getting out running with my colleagues. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously tons of stuff going on. I think it was every Thursday, a bunch of running as tubies would run. obviously, as the name suggests, around Shoreditch before lunch, which is really fun.
You could walk if you wanted to.
Oh, you could, yeah. One could walk also.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, these days my lunch times is just walking over to my fridge in my kitchen and getting like leftover dinner from the night before and then eating it on my own. But before all that, obviously, I mean, it's just often you'd go out for lunch with your team members or just, I mean, even people you'd not seen for ages because you're working in like a different corner of the office. But we were very fortunate with our studio location at the time. It was like super central and there was like so much nice stuff nearby, especially in summer. It was really cool to just go to a church park and just sit there for a bit.
And are these like employee-led initiatives? So like, are there many kind of like employee-led initiatives? Was the kind of like running club something that you just sort of grouped together and did yourselves?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of these kind of more social activities are absolutely employee-led or at least employee-inspired with the support of the company. Our studio experience team does a really outstanding job of embracing it and trying to support in the ways that they can. So you've got the Run Club. We've got a group of people who like playing video games together. We've got people who like to go to the cinema together and all these kinds of other activities, again, to kind of socialize and with your colleagues and kind of be friends beyond just the normal working hours. But equally important is ustwo is the kind of, again, inclusive space where if you don't want to engage in that and you want to just clock off at the end of your workday and go spend time with your family or a different group of friends and all that kind of stuff, that's okay and that's respected. Genuinely nobody looks down on you. I was probably one of the more antisocial people at ustwo. I went to almost none of those activities and I never once felt excluded or looked down upon in my 6 years at ustwo, even though I didn't engage with the vast majority of those things. All those activities are there for you if you want to be a part of it. And if you've got a lot of great ideas, we'd love to hear them. But equally, if that doesn't interest you and that isn't a part of what you want, that's just as okay. And you will feel just as at home at ustwo. And kind of wherever you are on that spectrum, again, ustwo will meet you.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's sort of like design industry specific, but I was quite struck when I kind of moved into like the design world about like the time that people could start, not just ustwo where I worked before as well, like, oh, okay, 9:30. And then you can also stay later. There's that flexibility there.
We've got core working hours of 10 to 4 where everybody's kind of expected to be on and available. But when you start before 10 is kind of up to you. As long as you're there from 10 to 4 and you're working your 8-hour working day and you've got your hour-long lunch break on top of that, if you want to start at 7 in the morning and really end the day at 4, which is me, I'm the extra early morning person, that's fine. Or if you want to start your day at 10, and work till 7 p.m.
That's it. That's me.
Yeah, equally fine. And we try and keep all of the studio events, all of our project meetings, one-to-ones with your manager, all those kinds of things within that 10 to 4 to really provide people as much flexibility as possible. Now, being client services, sometimes we're working with clients who maybe are in the US or maybe they're out in Japan or in some other radically different time zone. And we try to work with our teams to find, ways that, we can still support them on those journeys. Or if they really can't do that, can we find some alternative project for them? Again, to try and make sure we've got people who are able to be and interested in being a little bit more flexible. Okay, well, for example, Rachel and I have both done projects out in Japan. And so we both had to shift our times a bit earlier. In my case, when I was doing that project, I ended up working a bit of a split shift where I would work really, really early in the morning, and then I would take most of the rest of the morning off. And spend it with family, do the school runs, do all that kind of stuff, and then work a bit in the early afternoon. And that worked out really well for me and my family personally. And I think, Rachel, you did something a little bit different. But
similar. It was probably more like Aaron's normal day because I started work at 7. But then I would take maybe like a 2-hour or sometimes even like a 3-hour lunch to do whatever I wanted to do. Yeah. Maybe I wanted to go home or maybe I wanted to travel to the office or go to the gym or whatever, and then do the rest of my hours afterwards because the rest of my project team were asleep. It doesn't make a difference whether I do those 3-4 hours work. from 11 till 3 or 2 till 5. No one's going to be online for me to talk to anyway. So I may as well go to my favourite gym class or whatever it was.
There's not that much out of hours sort of Slack messages or...
We really try and discourage it. We want people to have a life outside of work. The providing our clients with 24/7 support is not something we normally do. We're there for in-hour support, in-hours project work. And we really try and respect our employees' time.
So what I'm going to do now is just have a look at some of the questions that people have sent in. Let's go. So hi, for those that don't live close to one of your offices, are you open to fully remote teams with the odd physical visit? I'm in the UK, but outside of regular travel and distance to London.
Our studio culture is something we still feel is incredibly valuable, both to us as an organization, but also to our clients as well. So we're prior to the pandemic, we were expecting people to be basically full-time in the studio. We aren't expecting that anymore. But similarly, this moment in time, we aren't offering fully remote positions at the moment. Our actual remote working policy isn't 100% defined yet, but the trajectory of travel is 2 to 3 days a week in the studio once we're kind of back to a semblance of normality, and we're kind of working through the earliest stages of that transition period right now and kind of trying to help meet people where they're at in terms of that. So yeah, not fully remote right now, but neither is it full-time in the office. Our expectation is, like I said, 2 to 3 days a week in on-site once we kind of are on the other side of this transition period.
Okay. Next question. Would you say ustwo works more in a new squad style where they work within a single area of single brand or clients, or more of an old agency style where everyone can work on multiple clients?
As a designer or a tech person at ustwo, you will only be on one client. But I don't know whether I would describe it as a typical squad, in that you won't only be working on a tiny slice of that project always. You might have a focus for a bit, but then you might switch around. Like, so on the Body Coach, we are split into two what we call squads, but it's always caveated with it's not the typical squad model. And they do have different focuses, but it's not a focus of this squad is only ever going to work on this shopping list feature and that's all that they're going to do. It's a bit more outcome driven, and the focus is on trying to retain users past the first month or whatever that focus might be. And so you will do different things within that, different initiatives within that squad. And
I think the other important thing to remember is that, once you're done with a particular client project, either because that project's come to an end or because you've rotated off that project, doesn't mean you'll even be working in the same sector for your next project. You might do one health and wellness project, and then you might be in fintech, or maybe you'll be in transportation, or maybe you'll be in retail or telecommunications or education, or any number of the other sectors that we regularly get ourselves involved with. So you will get quite a wide breadth both within a given client project, but also as you move from project to project, as you continue your time at ustwo, you will get a lot of variety.
Okay. A colleague of mine, or of all of ours, sorry, don't know why it's just mine, Dom used this analogy of he calls designers at ustwo like little detectives, because you get dropped into this world of your client's world and you become an expert in that space, and then 3 months later you get dropped into a totally different world, and you nosy around that and you become an expert in that space, and then you just keep doing that, and so your challenge is always different and you always are exposed to different things.
Yeah. I like that. I think I would, it's definitely not exactly the same, but I think some of that is certainly true as an engineer as well. Like, you've obviously got to learn so much about the business requirements for any new client, as well as the architecture that you'll be working with, which could also be quite different. But yeah, I think some of that I'm going to steal some of that for the engineering team.
Next question. Without going into any sensitive details, I'm interested on what the commercial relationship looks like with the Body Coach. I'm assuming it's not based on set deliverables. Is it more of an ongoing engagement with an agile team?
I will say that, our preferred working relationships with our clients, and I'm going to talk more generally, not just about the body coach, is that we really rely on what are the outcomes that, as a client, they're most interested in. And we try to give indications of what those deliverables might be along that journey, but we try to make the contract as agile as we can make it. Now, obviously, some of our clients are a bit more prepared for that than others, and so we kind of have to work with them both from an education standpoint, but also try and find a way that we can give them the reassurance as a business that they want to have, that they are going to be, whatever we produce is going to meet their expectations, but at the same time give us the flexibility that we desire to try and actually achieve, to the best of our abilities, the outcomes that they want, maybe not always necessarily in the way that they're anticipating, but in a way that they are ultimately also very, very happy with. And so, we do spend a lot of time, in particular our European delivery director, Colin, but across the board, trying to make those contracts as both reassuring, but also as flexible as possible.
I guess just to add one tiny thing to that, our colleague Hilary recently wrote a really good, quite long, but really, I loved it, a blog post about outcome-based working.
Yes.
Specifically using the body coach as like an example of how we've done it, but I think that blog post could be quite indicative of the kind of work that we do. Mm-hmm. So to the questioner, that might be a good resource.
Probably one for you, Aaron. What advice would you give to aspiring developers?
Don't be afraid. Just try new things. Always try and learn. Don't beat yourself up. Everybody's got bugs. Every bit of software has bugs. Whole teams can look at a bug for months and be scratching their heads at it. It's normal. It's okay. A lot of developers feel imposter syndrome. You're not alone. You are doing well. You are probably more experienced than you think you are. And give yourself that vote of self-confidence. And just, keep trying, keep learning. Remember that no matter what technology you use, there's always going to be something else coming along. And that the skills that are most important for you to develop are that problem-solving skills and that team communication skills, because that's going to take you to every job you have, every level of seniority. Those skills will ultimately be what takes you a really, really long way.
I've just seen one question that I really feel like I must answer, because I've been asked it before, maybe not here, maybe somewhere else, but the question is, hello, does ustwo use a hiring algorithm, or does humans actually look at all applications?
Yeah, so we've got no algorithm other than humans.
That's me. We look at all the applications, I can assure you.
For the roles in which I'm the hiring manager for, I look at 100% of our CVs. And I look at 100% of the cover letters. If it's coming from a recruiter, I read 100% of their notes. So it is not getting flagged or screened by some algorithm. It's me putting in the hours every day to look at them all, because again, we value that. Every algorithm out there has a bias based on its creators, there is no magical algorithm that's going to fit ustwo's values, that are going to be able to help spot those people who maybe don't have the support and experience for writing that amazing CV that is going to, play really well to an algorithm. Maybe they've never had that experience and don't know even what a good CV looks like. But if they can communicate a bit about who they are and a bit about their experience, we can see through that, and we will take the time to actually look at that and try and unpick that and use that as an indicator to ultimately bring them into that first interview.
Thank you. I think our time's up. So I just wanted to say thank you all, panelists.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. This has been recorded, so it will be available via playback. If you do have any questions, you can email us, drop us a note. We'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.